Eccoci, allora diamo un saluto anche alle persone da casa, il saluto lo abbiamo anche già dato alle persone che sono qui del pubblico con noi. Siamo molto contenti di avere Alfredo Jaar. Purtroppo, come dicevo, alle persone da casa non ce l'abbiamo dal vivo, ma ce l'abbiamo dall'albergo qui in Italia, però appunto perché è risultato positivo stamattina a un test per il Covid. Quindi diciamo, per le persone che sono da fuori non credo che cambi molto, anzi direi che non cambia niente. Mi dispiace molto per le persone che sono qui, mi dispiace molto per Alfredo che appunto deve essere, invece di incontrare delle persone, avere il calore anche che potreste appunto comunicargli direttamente, in realtà non ce l'abbiamo, ecco. Quindi mi scuso appunto, ecco, diciamo a nome anche appunto non solo dell'università, ma anche evidentemente dal Mambo, perché questa è un'iniziativa che va a coprire 4 giornate di studio, di incontri con artisti, curatori, con storici dell'arte, per ricostruire un po' la figura di Pasolini attraverso anche quello che è il suo lascito, quindi che cosa ci ha lasciato, che cosa è ancora importante. E volevamo iniziare appunto con Alfredo Jaar, che tanti lavori ha dedicato a Pasolini, tanto del suo interesse è proprio andato incontro a diciamo, tematiche italiane, della cultura italiana. Lui è un artista, immagino che se siete qui lo conoscete già, quindi non vi faccio grandi parole su di lui, nel senso un artista cileno che ha esposto in tutto il mondo, anche adesso abita a New York, e che però appunto è stato sempre molto sensibile ai temi della cultura e ai temi in qualche modo della politica, della società, e quindi anche oggi vedrete il suo racconto sarà molto articolato e molto, diciamo, che tocca tantissimi temi. Per cui insomma, vi ringrazio. Io adesso, prima di passare alla parola ad Alfredo, lascio un attimo anche a Anna a fare dei saluti.
Io mi unisco ai saluti già fatti da Roberto e le scuse già fatte da Roberto. Ci dispiace moltissimo per questa situazione, ci dispiace molto non dare calore ad Alfredo e non ricevere il calore di Alfredo, perché certamente averlo avuto con noi sarebbe stato diverso, anche se comunque riusciremo ad apprezzare il lavoro che ha sviluppato, anche se dovremo ascoltarlo online, e lo ringraziamo molto naturalmente per la sua partecipazione. Giusto un ringraziamento in più al nostro direttore del Dipartimento, alla Soffitta, che ha permesso l'organizzazione di queste iniziative, al Mambo, al direttore del Mambo e anche a Roberto, che devo dire si è speso moltissimo per l'organizzazione di queste nostre giornate, al quale vanno i più grandi ringraziamenti. Quindi darei direttamente...
Sì, un'ultima notazione tecnica che do, ecco, intanto vediamo anche Alfredo e lo salutiamo, che è apparso anche lui. Un'ultima notazione è, diciamo, ci sarà questa introduzione di Alfredo, poi vedremo il film che durerà, non ricordo esattamente, 38 minuti, sbaglio? 38 minutes, right? Ok. E poi diciamo richiameremo Alfredo per avere, se vogliamo, qualche ulteriore commento, ma diciamo da casa diciamo, è solo la parte diciamo, introduttiva che vedremo e non la diciamo, diretta del film. Per cui questo per chiarezza per tutti quanti. Ecco. Per cui io lascerei la parola ad Alfredo. Welcome Alfredo. We thank you so much for coming and for your lecture about Pasolini.
Thank you, Roberto. And, thank you, Roberto. Thank you, Anna. And thank you for the audience. I am extremely sorry and disappointed and frustrated that I'm not there with you. I was looking forward coming to Bologna, which is a city I like so much. But we did a precaution this morning, a test, and I was positive. And so we decided to do it like this. Again, I'm extremely sorry. So I've prepared a very simple 15-20 minutes presentation to present the film to you. So I'm going to share the screen. And if Roberto, if you can tell me if everything is okay before I start.
Yeah, it's okay. It's
okay, good. So 11 September 2001 was a shattering event in the history of the world. As you know, that day, the two towers in New York City were attacked, and two other targets also in Washington and in Philadelphia. And that date, September 11, has remained in our memories as a turning point in the history. But for us from Chile and from Latin America, there was another September 11 a few years before, in 1973. And it's also a shattering event that changed the lives of Chile and Latin America and the world for those of us who have progressist ideas. That day, as you know, there was a military coup sponsored by the CIA with Nixon and Kissinger behind. And basically, a military dictatorship by General Pinochet started that lasted 17 years. This was the bombing of the La Moreda Palace, where Salvador Allende was starting his day. And these images have stayed in our memory forever. It has been very difficult to erase this memory. This is what September 11 means for us. This is the last image that we have of Salvador Allende before he died that day. Salvador Allende believed in the capacity of politics and culture to change the world and to change Chile, to make Chile a better Chile, a more equal Chile. Today, you can still find this graffiti in the walls of Santiago. It says, el ser joven y no ser revolucionario es una contradicción hasta biológica. It means to be young and not to be a revolutionary. It's a contradiction almost biological. I've always liked this statement. I think it's an extraordinary statement. So that date was marked forever in the history of Chile and in the world. Here I have done with letra set a sign that says 11/09/73, and then I added 12:10, which is the time of the first bomb that fell on the presidential palace. I became obsessed with that date, Tuesday, September 11. And I had a calendar for that year. And with letra set, I put the number 1 on September 12 and September 13 and 14 and 15 and so on. I changed the date. I wanted to suggest that after Tuesday, September 11, every day is an 11. A nightmare had started, and we didn't know where it would end. So this was my first attempt to represent the coup and the days after. I only had a few number 1 in my letra set, so I couldn't go beyond September, Tuesday 18. And so I decided to get a full calendar and to do it directly there. So this is a 73 calendar. And this was when everything was normal. But when we reach September, after Tuesday, September 11, I make a photocopy of the number 11 and I glue it on every day, suggesting that every day after September 11 was an 11. It was a dark tunnel, and I didn't know where we would be free out of this tunnel that lasted 17 years. So this is the month of September. This is October. This is November. And this is December. Later, I was able to do another calendar, this time with Photoshop, and I did it in black. And September, after Tuesday, martedì 11, every day is an 11. These were graphic design projects where I was trying to comment or to commemorate that date that changed everything. I really didn't know I was going to become an artist yet. I also had a notebook. I was studying architecture, and in my free time, I was doing this. This was in 1974, a year after the coup, and I was filling my pages with 11, 11, 11. It was a nightmare, and it was never going to end. That's another page from another notebook, another page from another notebook. Here, apparently, I got tired after half a page and I stopped. It is during the first years of the dictatorship that I discovered Gramsci, because Gramsci was a very important figure in the Chilean resistance to the dictatorship. I had been studying architecture, but I was, of course, interested in politics, and in the underground, the writings of Gramsci were circulating everywhere. At one point, I decided to abandon my studies of architecture, and I went to study film. And it is in studying film that I discovered Pasolini. I first discovered him as a filmmaker, but very quickly I realized that he was also a poet, a writer, a critic, a polemicist, a full intellectual that was always thinking about Italy and Europe and the world and expressing his ideas openly to the world. I became fascinated with both Gramsci and Pasolini, and even more when I discovered the connection between the two of them. When I discovered Pasolini's poem, Le ceneri di Gramsci, I was blown away. I thought it was the most extraordinary poem of the 20th century. So at that time, I felt like this poem by Ungaretti when I was thinking about Gramsci and Pasolini. I felt like this: m'illumino d'immenso, by so much talent, by so much intelligence, and so much critical capacity to look at the world and to think the world and to think the context. This I did later. This neon was done much later, but at that time I had discovered Ungaretti, and I felt that this poem was a perfect synthesis of how I felt in the face of those two giants. And of course, the questions that was in the air during the dictatorship was the classical question that progressives ask themselves all the time: che fare? This is the studio of Mario Merz in Torino, where he had written this question, with which so many people in the world today identify with. Che fare? As you know, he also did this piece with neon in this container with wax. It's one of my favorite works of Mario Merz, because this question has followed me since I discovered it, and it is the question to which I do not have an answer. And perhaps every single project of mine tries, without success, to answer this question. Che fare? It was at that time, in the first years of the dictatorship, because I didn't know what to do, I became a magician and started making magic because I wanted to change the world around me. And I thought perhaps as a magician, I was going to be able to do that. But of course, it was an illusion. And later, I abandoned magic and I discovered the capacity of art and culture to affect change. And of course, Gramsci and Pasolini were great proponents of that idea. Culture can affect change. I've done hundreds of drawings of Gramsci. Sometimes this is the first thing I do in my studio in the morning. It is as if I want to penetrate his brain and ask myself, what would Gramsci think today? This is what I'm thinking when I'm making the drawings. What would Gramsci think? I've done different compositions with these drawings. This is called Nuvola, cloud, with 56 drawings of Gramsci. Some of my drawings have been used for different editorials in Italy to illustrate the covers of the books of Antonio Gramsci, like this one. And I've done many projects with Gramsci in the background. The Maxi Museum in Rome invited me to do a public project, and I decided to use a very important quote from him. Il vecchio mondo sta morendo, quello nuovo tarda a comparire, e in questo chiaroscuro nascono i mostri. So I did it in white on red and in white on green, and we put thousands of these posters in the streets of Rome. I felt that this statement from Gramsci from the 30s was very much on target in looking at Italy today, with the rise of fascism or neo-fascism. This was my way to bring Gramsci back to the present, bring his voice and his critical analysis, his intelligence. So besides the posters being in the streets of Rome, we also had a stack in the museum itself, inviting people to take them home and to distribute them freely. I was also invited to do a project about Gramsci in Torino recently. There is a new space called Casa Gramsci, and for one of the windows, I created this neon that says Antonio Gramsci ritorna. I had a major exhibition last September in Sao Paulo, Brazil. And Brazil, thanks to Bolsonaro, is also experimenting a kind of new fascism. And so we translated the statement by Gramsci into Portuguese, and I also installed it in neon in my space. O velho mundo está morrendo, o novo demora a nascer. Nesse claro oscuro surgen os monstros. And I also created posters based on the colors of the flag, and they were in the Sao Paulo Biennial, and people could take them home and distribute them freely. So it is my continuous way to think about Gramsci's ideas and to try to bring them into the present. Of course, the Secretary of State, Henry Kissinger, is the one responsible of the military coup, and he's the one who financed the coup in Chile. And he's someone against whom I've done many projects. This is a work from 1984. It's just a piece of paper with a black hole. And I have a quote by Henry Kissinger from June 1969. He says, "Latin America is not important. Nothing important can come from the South. History has never been produced in the South. The axis of history runs from Moscow via Bonn and Washington to Tokyo." So I created this piece with a black hole as if we do not exist. The South, the global South, does not exist for Mr. Kissinger. And if they exist, he kills them. He's the most important living criminal in the world today. As you know, he killed millions of people in Indonesia, in Cambodia, in Vietnam, and is responsible for millions of deaths in Latin America through military coups, sponsored and financed by the CIA. At the time, I started sending postcards to friends that simply say, "Buscando a Kissinger," "Alla ricerca de Kissinger." These were postcards that I bought in New York with the symbols of democracy of the United States. And I would put with letra set, "Cercando a Kissinger." This is the building of the United Nations in New York. Cercando a Kissinger. And in only one postcard, in front of the United Nations building, I put "Arresten a Kissinger" instead of "Buscando a Kissinger." In Berlin, in 2012, I had a retrospective, and the three newspapers from Berlin, the Tagesspiegel, Berliner Zeitung, and TAS, invited me to do a project to celebrate my opening and my exhibition. So on September 11, 2012, we published advertisements in the three newspapers. And these advertisements say, "Arrest Kissinger." And it says "Arrest Kissinger" in all the languages of the countries where he committed war crimes. So you can recognize Portuguese for Brazil, Spanish for Argentina and Chile and Paraguay, and you will recognize different languages from Laos, Cambodia, Vietnam, Greece, and so on. So the same that I did with Gramsci, I've tried to do with Pasolini, and I've tried to bring him back to life. And so in 2009, I created this film called Le Ceneri di Pasolini, in reference to Le Ceneri di Gramsci. And that film incorporates many of the ideas that I think are important from Pasolini that can be used today. So this was my introduction, and I think now Roberto will show you the film directly from his computer.
Thank you, Alfredo. If there is any short question before to project, se ci sono delle domande prima di farvi vedere il film, volentieri, se no salutiamo per un attimo Alfredo e ci vediamo il film. Però se ci sono delle questioni, delle domande, volentieri, ecco, se no ci vediamo il film e poi richiamiamo Alfredo mentre salutiamo le persone che sono da casa direttamente e a cui appunto non, per motivi anche di SIAE non possiamo far vedere il film in diretta. Per cui un saluto a tutte le persone da casa e noi ci vediamo il film allora e poi richiamiamo Alfredo. Grazie Alfredo intanto. Thanks a lot Alfredo.